Hello and welcome along to another episode of the Westminster Roundup with the Sport and Recreation Alliance. I'm your host, Alex Sexton, and I'm once again joined by the Parliamentary Policy Officer for the Alliance, Ryan McCulloch.
Hello, Alex. How you doing?
I'm very well, thanks, Ryan. How are you?
Yeah, good.
We'll be once again helping our members delve into what's happening in the corridors of power in Westminster and taking a look back at what has happened and what to expect in the coming weeks. And I think the best place to kick off with, Ryan, was a very well-attended virtual all-party parliamentary group for sport, which was hosted by our new chair, Ben Bradley, last week.
Yeah, so as you've said, Alex, virtual, which was quite interesting for the first time to do it that way. And I don't know whether it's because of, the travel to London or the standing in a long queue at Parliament, but actually it was the best attended APPG since I've been at the Alliance. So that was good. We had over 100 people on the Zoom call for that, which was great. Ben Bradley's debut in the chair, as you said. Plenty of important issues raised. The title of the meeting was the effects of COVID-19 on grassroots sport and physical activity. Delighted to have our CEO Lisa, Sport England CEO Tim Hollingsworth, and UK CEO Hugh Edwards there. Range of issues came up, particularly on the government support stuff. So the furlough scheme, which has been extended, but also looking at who had missed out from that, for example, across the because we know that a number of people have missed out on some of the money from the furlough scheme. So that was raised. There was also some chat on things like music licensing. A range of different issues came up.
And one of the topics that was covered, touching upon the furlough scheme, was the self-employment support. We know that the furlough scheme has now been extended, but there haven't quite yet been those promises made for our self-employed, of which we know there's 100,000 of them in the sport and recreation sector. So talk us through what happened with that question.
Yeah, so that's been a sort of a kind of interesting issue, and one that we're a bit concerned about because it actually runs out this week, Alex, I believe. And I think we originally thought, and it was probably originally announced, that the self-employed support scheme would run alongside the furlough scheme for those who are employed. And now that that's been extended, the government have yet to extend the self-employed scheme. And it was interesting because Ben Bradley is also the Parliamentary Private Secretary to the Secretary of State for Business. And so with that hat on, he said that he knew the government were looking at this, but of course, we need to find out if it's going to be extended or what's going to be available to self-employed people, because there are over 100,000, I think, self-employed people in the sector, whether that's coaches or kind of any other job, really. And that was a big concern across all three of the organisations that were represented there. And it's something that Ben has said he will definitely take away to the business department. So that's really positive from that point of view, and hopefully we'll see some movement on that.
And it was a fantastic opportunity. As you mentioned, over 100 of our members joined us for that virtual meeting. Trying to squeeze everything we needed to discuss in an hour was almost impossible, but a couple of different areas were highlighted, including the self-employment scheme. But one other crucial area, which we had a number of questions about, was the PE and sport premium. We got a nice response from Ben and a commitment to push that forward. What are we expecting from that?
Yeah, so just to briefly talk about the issue itself, I'm sure that obviously everybody was there, but a lot of people know that currently the PE and sport premium helps to fund school sport, either equipment, facilities, whatever, and that's currently paid for, if you like, by the soft drinks industry levy, also known as sugar tax money. The revenue from that has been dropping off since it was implemented, which I guess means the policy is working. People are buying less sugary drinks. But there's therefore been no guarantee yet that the PE and sport premium, which is 320 million a year, will be continued. And so, we need to sort of find that out because it's due to run out this year. So there's been a commitment from Ben alongside Hugh and Lisa to write to the government, to the Department for Education in particular, to try and get a commitment on what's going to happen with the PE and sport premium. I know at the Alliance we've asked that we extend the sugar tax or soft drinks industry levy money to milky-based drinks to therefore facilitate the money to still be available for school sport. So we'll kind of, the next step is to put that together with UK Active and try and work out, the best way we can approach government. But I think Ben is happy to sort of, as chair of the APPG, write a letter to DfE and see what we can get back.
And it was great to also see that point get picked up in the Telegraph off the back of that meeting. And in fact, that was the headline they run with. So we know it's a really important topic, especially with schools returning and planning for the next academic year. And finally, on the APPG, Ryan, I guess the big issue and the one that's constantly on our members' lips at the moment is return to play.
Yep, return to play came up in questioning at the end particularly, I know a lot of members of ours are concerned about when we can sort of get back to playing safely and how we can do that. We've obviously been working with DCMS on a kind of a range of measures, etc. And we would obviously continue to ask that members contribute to that. Ben has said that he's fully happy to support us and our membership in any way that he can. So again, some really positive stuff coming out of that to make us think key is to go forward as kind of one sporting unit, if you like.
And what we would flag, obviously, is that with 106 people at least in the call at one stage, there are a lot of questions that came in. Not everything could be answered at the time, but we do encourage our members to continue to contact us, and we will push for answers from the right departments for you as well. And I think we're looking to host another virtual APPG in the not too distant future as well.
Yep, I think we're going to hope to host one in June. I'm now pinned myself to that, but we are hoping that we can, because in a way the virtual ones are in some ways slightly easier to organise, or at least the organisation can be expedited because obviously it's a Zoom meeting and everyone can just go in their kitchen and, you know, put a shirt on, keep their shorts on and watch it. So hopefully we'll get another one going towards the end of June.
Fantastic. So we'll look ahead to that. Something else we should look ahead to. Time of recording, it's Thursday morning and we're waiting for the Prime Minister to make an update on where we currently lie with lockdown restrictions and a potential easing of that. What are we expecting to hear from Boris Johnson later today, Ryan?
Well, I think first and foremost, I'll start with a quick announcement the government's made that some of our members may have seen about elite level contact training returning for sport. And this is part of the government's phased plan. And the idea is that training can resume in a contact basis under the right safety conditions with testing and all the range and social, you know, all the range of measures that need in place for that. The idea for that is that then phase 3 is the return to sport, possibly behind closed doors. So after that announcement, we saw that the Premier League have said that their clubs voted unanimously to go back to training with the hope of getting at least Premier League football back behind closed doors. So we wait to see how other sports will deal with that if their seasons are still going. But yes, you're right. This week, Boris Johnson, it's sort of week 3, if you like. So every 3 weeks, he's going to announce how we're phasing out of lockdown, and he is going to talk probably today. As you say, we await to see it today. But where we are in the COVID alert system, he was at the liaison committee yesterday to answer questions other than Dominic Cummings also, and he said that we may well be moving towards the number 3 on the 5-stage alert level, which would allow us to ease measures. And the words he used were, "I'm hoping to go further than I thought I could." Again, not sure if that was just a distraction from Dominic Cummings. It's on day 7 of the news cycle, but we are possibly looking at the family bubble idea, for example, where you may be able to go and visit family members. And so I guess in terms of, the measures we've already had, if you're a golfer, you may now be able to go and play golf with your family, but we await to see what Boris Johnson is actually going to say on that in particular.
And of course, we remain in constant conversation with DCMS and government officials to make sure we pass on that advice directly and to help shape that guidance. And there is potentially some movement, as you mentioned, in that scale, which potentially, and that is the crucial words we're using at the moment, could start seeing a relaxation of some measures, start getting more activities returned. We know no sooner than July 4th for some activity, but there is the potential, and we're still very much advising our members around indoor activities or those that are yet to return to start preparing that guidance for when we can eventually get every activity back open.
Yeah, exactly. So one of the other announcements the government made this week, just to cover that off, is the announcement of the test, track, trace system. So it's quite a complex system, but if you are signed up to it and you have had symptoms or you've come into contact with somebody who's had symptoms, if you're signed up to this system, then you'll be alerted and asked to isolate. And I think the government is saying that could expedite the process around how we move down the alert system. As you said, July the 4th was the earliest for some return to sport, possibly indoors. So we would ask members, in particular members who aren't already on the kind of road back to activity yet and who maybe sort of can only participate indoors, to have plans in place about how they could do so safely. not just for the benefit of government, but also for the benefit of their clubs, because those clubs will not want to be in a situation where if the government announces indoor sport can return, and again, the word you use, potential, can't say enough, whenever that date may be, it may be later or earlier than the government have said, depending on the alert system, clubs will want to be ready to hit the ground running. So we'd encourage all kind of member bodies to have that guidance in place about how you could potentially return, even if it's indoors, with social distancing in place, with cleansing measures. Do you need to limit the numbers that would usually play a sport? For example, if you're going to play badminton indoors, will it only be 2 rather than doubles? So social distancing, that sort of thing. So we would definitely be encouraging members to do that, and any help that they need or any guidance that they might want, they are welcome to get in touch with us, as always.
Of course, and we've already seen a lot of our members modify the offer that they have for their activity to make sure it can fit into this framework to be able to be delivered. Of course, we would always say it's the caveat of when safe to do so and to be following that government guidance, because that's the criteria we need to be meeting at the moment. And as Ryan mentions, the policy team and the Alliance as a whole will be there to support you and to answer any questions you may have. And also just to flag that we do have a COVID-19 support section on our website. And at the moment, that is currently hosting guidance documents on individual activity. So if you have published anything to your members, do share that with us and we'll be happy to pop that onto our channels as well. And speaking of those COVID-19 support pages, I believe we've updated a couple of other sections with some new support and some new guidance that's coming to us, right?
We have, Alex. So we had the stuff that was on there already about the tampon tax money that's available. That I believe is still on the COVID section. But also launched this week is the Coronavirus Community Support Fund, which is 200 million for charities and community organisations. Now, that's a little bit vague, that bit, if I'm honest, but charities is definitely there, and organisations that benefit those who are disadvantaged in communities, and there are plenty of our members that do that work and their clubs that do that work. This is being distributed to the National Lottery Fund, and there's 200 million there for organisations to bid into. So that's definitely one that's worth looking out for our members on there. And if if anybody needs any help with that, then happy to provide more information or links to where you can apply.
And whenever this new information comes out, especially around financial support or latest government guidance, we will be sharing that across our social media channels. So please do make sure you're following @SportRecTweets on Twitter. And just a plug that's slightly away from Westminster for those channels is that next week will be National Volunteers Week, and we're going to be heavily engaged with that, celebrating some of our members, celebrating the amazing volunteer workforce that is out there and is prepared to help sport and recreation activity return once we're all allowed to do so. So please do make sure you're connecting with us on that. And in terms of contacting the policy team, how can our members do that, Ryan?
Easiest way, Alex, is policy@sportandrecreation.org.uk. Also, feel free to go on the website and grab our individual email addresses if it's something you think we can address. So obviously from my perspective, the kind of parliamentary stuff, but we're all kind of well versed on the coronavirus support by now, and I think it's fair to say that if I just sort of make a plug for what we do, that we are with the APPG people who have seen and the follow-ups we can get to that, we are getting some traction on some of the work that we do. So we had a written question last week which was kindly submitted on the self-employment scheme. Now the government gave a straight back answer, but it then gives us something to follow up on, and we're hoping that we can start. DCMS questions is the week after, and we're hoping to get some questions on sort of this stuff, coupled with the letter that Ben's writing, is how we can try and put pressure on to make sure that clubs and their staff, or coaches, I should say, really, self-employed coaches, can get the money that they kind of need to keep themselves going in this period, particularly as we're not out of the woods yet in terms of when we can, all go back to participating in sport fully. So.
And we'll be returning with another Westminster Roundup in a couple of weeks where we'll reflect on that and talk about how DCMS questions went, and perhaps reflect on the latest government advice from Boris Johnson's update later today, and hopefully start looking ahead to some further reopening of sport and recreation activity. So just leaves me to thank you once more, Ryan, for joining us and providing a nice thorough update, especially around the APPG and what's come from that. And I look forward to catching up with you in the next couple of weeks.
Cheers, Alex. Thanks very much.
And thank you very much to all of our members for joining us. As mentioned, any policy questions, do email our policy team, policy@sportandrecreation.org.uk, or drop us a direct line at SportRec Tweets. That's all from the Westminster Roundup. Take care for now.